Some men come home to silence and call it peace. I came home to find my grandson lying at the bottom of the basement stairs, and my daughter-in-law standing over him saying he'd just had one of his clumsy spells again. Let me back up, because you deserve the whole picture, not just the worst 5 seconds of it. My name is Walter Doyle. I'm 67 years old, and I spent 38 years as a structural inspector for the state of Ohio, the last 20 of them running my own consulting firm out of Columbus. What that means, in plain terms, is that I spent my career walking into buildings other people trusted, completely bridges, schools, parking garages, and finding the one hairline crack that meant the whole thing wasn't as sound as it looked. I was good at it. Damn good. Funny thing about a man who spends 40 years finding what's wrong with concrete, he can walk right past what's wrong in his own family and never see it, not once, not for 2 years. Friend, if you're new here, welcome. Settle in, because this one's going to take a while, and I promise you it's worth the ride. Hit that like button, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I read everyone. I live outside Westerville, a quiet little pocket north of Columbus, in the same brick colonial I raised my own 2 kids in. My wife, Carol, passed 6 years ago. Cancer. Fast, the way it sometimes is, like it wanted to get it over with before we could brace for it. After she went, my son Michael moved back to Ohio from Denver with his boy, Nathan, who was 5 at the time. Michael's first wife had left them both when Nathan was barely 2, and Michael had been doing it alone out west, working himself thin as a pipeline engineer, dragging that boy from job site to job site. When he asked if they could come stay near me, I said yes before he finished the sentence. Having that boy in the house again, hearing feet on the stairs, finding cereal bowls in the sink, it was the first thing that had felt like living since Carol died. Nathan was 7 when Michael met Danielle. She came into our lives through, of all things, a church potluck. The kind of woman who brought a homemade pie and remembered everybody's name by the second time she met them. She had a laugh that filled up a room, and she was patient with Nathan in a way that made my chest ache with gratitude, because I know how hard it is to be patient with somebody else's grief. The first time she met him, she got down to his eye level and said, "Your dad tells me you're the smartest 7-year-old in Ohio." Nathan, serious as a judge, said, "I'm the smartest 7-year-old in Westerville. I haven't met all of Ohio yet." She laughed so hard she had to sit down. I liked her. I want to be honest about that, because it matters later. I liked her enough that when Michael told me he was going to marry her, I didn't ask him to slow down, the way maybe a father should have. I told myself Nathan needed a mother again. I told myself I was a man who'd spent his whole career catching what didn't add up, and I'd look Danielle over as carefully as I'd look over a load-bearing wall, and she'd passed. I told myself a lot of things that year. Here's what 38 years in structural inspection teaches you, if you're paying attention. The real damage never announces itself. Nobody's roof collapses with a warning shot. It's quiet. It's a little settling here, a little moisture there, nothing that trips an alarm, until one day it's not settling anymore, it's failing. You don't catch it by walking past. You catch it by going looking. And most people never go looking because from where they're standing, everything looks plumb. From where I was standing, everything looked plumb. Good house on Schrock Road. Nathan doing fine in 3rd grade, according to every conversation I had with Michael. Danielle posting pictures from the state fair with captions like blessed beyond words. Michael working 18-hour shifts on a pipeline expansion out near Marietta, 3 weeks on, 1 week home, because that contract was paying for Nathan's college fund, and he wasn't about to walk away from it. I was the one who was supposed to be keeping an eye on things while Michael was gone. That's what grandfathers do. I told myself I was doing that. I called every Sunday. Nathan always sounded a little tired on the phone, and when I mentioned it to Danielle, she'd laugh that big laugh and say, "Oh, Walter, you know boys his age, they'd sleep through breakfast if I let them." I believed her. In February, Nathan's teacher, a Mrs. Callahan, sent Michael an email. Michael forwarded it to me because he was out at the rig with no signal, saying Nathan had fallen asleep at his desk twice that week and seemed unusually unsteady on his feet during recess. Danielle told Michael she'd already taken him to urgent care, that it was a mild ear infection, throwing off his balance, all handled, nothing to worry about. Michael told me. I told myself she was handling it. That's what a good stepmother does. She handles things. In April, she texted Michael a picture of Nathan with a bandage over his eyebrow. Fell off the porch steps chasing the neighbor's cat. Silly boy. He's fine. Don't worry about it out there. Michael showed me the text on our Sunday call. I told him it sounded like normal boy stuff. I believed her too. It was a Wednesday in late June when I decided, on a whim, to drive over and surprise Nathan after school, because I'd found an old fishing rod of Carol's brother's in my garage, the exact size for a boy his age, and I couldn't wait until the weekend to give it to him. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to see his face. I pulled into the driveway on Schrock Road around 4 in the afternoon. The house looked ordinary. Danielle's car in the drive, curtains open, nothing out of place. I let myself in through the side door the way I always did, calling out for Nathan, and nobody answered. Then I heard it. A low sound, almost like a groan, coming from the basement door, which was standing open at the top of the stairs. I looked down, and my whole chest went cold. Nathan was crumpled at the bottom of the staircase, one leg bent underneath him at a wrong angle, his eyes half open but not tracking anything, his lips moving with no sound coming out. I don't know how I got down those stairs. I don't remember my knees hitting the concrete, though I found the bruises 2 days later. I had his face in my hands. Nathan. Nathan, buddy. Look at Grandpa. Look at me. Footsteps above. Danielle appeared at the top of the stairs in workout clothes, a phone in her hand, her expression somewhere between mild irritation and boredom, like I'd interrupted a phone call over nothing important. "Oh, he's fine, Walter," she said. "He's just having one of his clumsy spells again. He does this. Doctor says he's got an inner ear thing." I looked at my 7-year-old grandson lying at the bottom of a flight of concrete stairs with his leg bent wrong, and then I looked at her. And something in me, something that had spent 38 years learning to trust its own eyes over anybody's reassurance, simply refused to accept what she'd just said. "He's not clumsy," I said. "He's not moving his leg right. Call 911. Now, Walter, don't be dramatic. He does this every—" I was already dialing. The ambulance took 11 minutes. Out there past the edge of town. 2 paramedics came down those basement stairs with a backboard, and the one in front, a broad-shouldered guy, maybe 50, with a graying mustache and a name tag that said Petrosky, stopped cold the second his eyes landed on Nathan. He looked at the boy. He looked at the stairs. He looked up at Danielle, who was hovering at the top with her arms crossed now, phone still in her hand. And I watched something cross Petrosky's face that I recognized instantly, because I'd seen that exact look on a city building inspector's face once, years back, the moment he realized the load calculations he was reviewing had been falsified from the start. Recognition slamming into disbelief. He and his partner worked on Nathan with the kind of practiced calm you only get from doing something terrible over and over until your hands stop shaking even when your gut doesn't. I stood there, holding that fishing rod like a fool, useless in my own son's house. Then Petrosky straightened up and looked at me. "Sir, can I have a word?" "Kitchen, maybe." That particular sentence, I've since learned, is never good news in any profession, mine included. He pulled the kitchen door most of the way shut behind us and kept his voice low. "You the grandfather?" "Yes." "You live here?" "No. I was visiting. My son's out of state for work." He nodded slowly, like he was doing arithmetic he didn't care for. "We've been to this address before," he said. "Back in March. Different call. Boy was found unresponsive on the bathroom floor. Woman here said she was his stepmother, told us he'd gotten into a bottle of her migraine medication, said he had a history of getting into things he shouldn't. She was calm, real detailed about it. Almost rehearsed. The kitchen went very quiet. We filed with Children's Services that time," he said. "Standard procedure." He paused, studying my face. "You didn't know about any of that, did you?" It wasn't really a question. He could see the answer written all over me. "No," I said. "I did not know about any of that." I set the fishing rod down on the kitchen counter very carefully, because if I hadn't, I think I would have thrown it. I rode with Nathan in the ambulance. Danielle followed in her own car. In those 20 minutes to Mount Carmel East, sitting beside my grandson with an oxygen mask on his small face and a splint on his leg, I made a decision the same way I'd make a decision on a job site when I found rebar corroded clean through quietly, completely, with no room left for negotiation. 38 years of inspection work teaches you something else, too. You don't confront a bad structure by shouting at it. Shouting gets you nothing but a reputation for being emotional and a lawsuit from the contractor. What gets you everything is documentation, photographs, dates, measurements, every single finding written down and time-stamped before you ever say a word to anybody. Danielle had married into a family and apparently assumed nobody in it knew how to build a case. She'd forgotten I built cases for a living, on buildings that couldn't talk back to defend themselves, which made me better at it, not worse. I sat in that waiting room at Mount Carmel starting at 6:40 that evening in one of those stiff vinyl chairs that seem engineered specifically to keep a man from ever getting comfortable enough to stop worrying. A muted television in the corner was running a home renovation show. I still had airport dust on my shoes from a trip to see my sister in Tampa the week before, and I pulled out my phone and logged into the family insurance portal, the one Michael had added me to years back as an emergency contact for exactly this kind of situation, and I started reading. I almost didn't look. That's the part that will stay with me the rest of my life. I'd spent 2 years treating that house like it didn't need auditing, because it was family, because Danielle was kind at potlucks, because a woman who remembers your name and brings you pie surely isn't capable of anything underhanded. That was the worst miscalculation of my career, and I've made plenty over 38 years. The claims went back 14 months. 2 emergency room visits I had no memory of Michael ever mentioning to me directly, both while he was out of state on the rig. 1 ambulance dispatch, the one Petrosky had described. And then, worse, a string of prescriptions filled under Nathan's name, a sedating antihistamine. The over-the-counter kind that becomes something else entirely at the wrong dose, filled not at the pharmacy connected to Nathan's regular pediatrician, Dr. Levin, who'd known that boy since he was 2 weeks old and would have called Michael the second something looked wrong, but at a walk-in clinic 11 miles away, one none of us had ever set foot in. She'd gone out of her way to avoid the one doctor who would have asked questions. Every 3-week rotation Michael worked on that pipeline, every overtime shift, every bit of overtime pay that was supposed to be building Nathan's future, some of it, I now understood, had been quietly funding the exact system Danielle built to manage a little boy she found inconvenient when nobody was watching. I set the phone face down on my knee, picked it back up, kept reading. Danielle arrived at the hospital a little after 8. She'd changed out of her workout clothes into something pressed, lipstick freshly applied, like she was stopping by a luncheon rather than an emergency room. She sat down beside me and put a hand on my forearm. "How's he doing?" I didn't answer right away. "Walter. I know this looks bad, but you know how Nathan is. He's always been a little accident-prone. The paramedic," I said, keeping my voice level, mentioned something interesting. I watched her hands, not her face. 38 years of reading blueprints and reading people taught me the same lesson. Eventually, the face is what people rehearse. The hands are where the truth leaks out. Her fingers tightened, just barely, around the strap of her purse. "What'd he say?" Her voice stayed light. "Said he thought he recognized the address. Figured he was mixing it up with another call." Her fingers loosened. "Oh, these guys run so many calls, they all blur together after a while." She settled back into the chair, satisfied, the small exhale of someone who has just decided the danger has passed. I looked at the muted television and thought about every building I'd ever inspected where the contractor was so sure I hadn't found what they'd buried in the foundation. They never saw it coming either. A doctor came out around 10:30, a young woman named Dr. Ferris, careful and precise with her words. "Mr. Doyle, Nathan's stable. He's got a fractured tibia from the fall, which we're setting tonight, and we found elevated levels of diphenhydramine in his blood work. That's the active ingredient in common sleep aids and allergy medication. At this concentration, for his body weight, it's well beyond what would happen by accident." Danielle made a small, distressed sound right on cue. "Oh my goodness. He must have gotten into my medicine cabinet again. I've told him and told him." "Again," Dr. Ferris repeated. Just the one word. Flat. Silence. I watched Danielle realize, half a second too late, exactly what she'd handed me. "I just meant kids get curious," she recovered, smooth as she could manage. Dr. Ferris looked at her a beat longer than was comfortable, then turned back to me. We're required to notify children's services given the circumstances. A caseworker will reach out. Of course, I said. Whatever's needed. I felt Danielle go rigid in the chair beside me. She left around midnight, said she needed rest, promised to come back in the morning, kissed my cheek at the door like nothing at all had shifted between us. I watched her walk to her car through the waiting room glass, and the moment her taillights cleared the parking garage, I went straight back to my phone. I called my niece Patricia at 6 the next morning. She's a paralegal over at a firm downtown, sharp as anybody I know, and she's never once needed me to explain myself twice. Patricia, I need every insurance record on that family for the last 2 years, printed, organized by date. I need Michael's work schedule from his employer, verified. Have it for me by 9. By 9. Then I called Carol's old friend Ruth Ann's son, Gary Pruitt, who'd been a family law attorney in Franklin County for better than 20 years. Gary, it's Walter. I need a referral, somebody who's handled children's services cases, and I need it today. He didn't ask why. He just asked how bad. And when I told him, he was quiet for a second and then said he'd have a name by 8. I sat back in that vinyl chair with a cup of vending machine coffee, bitter and lukewarm, and thought this is exactly what it looks like from the inside, watching a structure fail. You're comfortable. You're busy. You trust the foundation because it's held up fine so far. And by the time you understand it was cracked from the start, you've already let 2 years go by standing on it. Not one more day. At 9:30, they let me back to see Nathan. He was propped up in a hospital bed too big for him, a cast already forming on his leg, cartoons playing that he wasn't watching. When he saw me in the doorway, his whole small face changed, that mix of relief and trying so hard not to cry that only a child can manage. Grandpa. I crossed that room in about 3 steps and held on to him for a long while without saying anything at all. When I finally pulled back, I looked him over carefully. Tired eyes. Something behind them, a 7-year-old shouldn't carry. Hey, bud, how's the leg? It hurts a little. He picked at the edge of the hospital blanket. Is Danielle coming back? The way he asked it, not hopeful, not scared exactly, just checking, doing the same kind of risk assessment I'd do walking into a condemned building, nearly broke something loose in my chest. No, I said. It's just you and me right now. I watched his shoulders drop, actual physical relief, the kind you can't fake at that age. Nathan, I kept my voice easy. Can I ask you something, buddy? When your dad's away working, and it's just you and Danielle, what's that like? He got very quiet. Looked at his hospital bracelet like it had suddenly become interesting. She gives me the sleepy medicine sometimes, he said finally, in the smallest voice I ever heard out of that boy. When her friends come over to play cards, she says it helps me have good naps. He looked up at me with the plain, guileless eyes of a child who doesn't yet understand how much weight his own words carry. But, Grandpa, I don't like it. It makes my head feel like it's full of cotton and I can't make my legs work right. I held it together, barely. Okay, bud, I said, smoothing his hair back. You didn't do anything wrong. Not one thing. You hear me? He nodded, still watching me the way kids do when they're trying to figure out whether the adults have actually got it handled. I've got it handled, I told him. I meant it more than I'd ever meant anything in my life. The caseworker, a woman named Carla Whitfield, met me in the hallway at 11. I handed her the folder Patricia had put together, insurance claims cross-referenced against Michael's confirmed work schedule, every ER visit, every prescription, the walk-in clinic records, and a handwritten timeline I'd built at 5 that morning over a second bad cup of coffee. She went through it page by page without a word. Mr. Doyle, she said eventually, this is remarkably thorough. I spent 38 years documenting things other people wanted overlooked, I said. I know what a paper trail's supposed to look like. She looked up at me. Combined with Nathan's statement this morning and the paramedic's prior report, this is now a priority case. We're moving today. Today, I said. I kept my face steady, professional, though something cold and precise had already locked into place inside me, the way a system settles once every piece finally runs the way it was designed to. Danielle thought she understood the family she'd married into. She'd never once considered that the old man down the road had spent his whole life finding what other people tried to hide. If you've stuck with me this far, friend, let me know down in the comments, and go ahead and hit that like button while you're there. Gary's referral was a woman named Melissa Ostrander, a family law attorney with an office on High Street. She read through my folder for the better part of 10 minutes without saying a single word, and I know it was 10 minutes because I sat there watching her wall clock the whole time. "Walk me through the work schedule again," she said. I did. Every rotation Michael had worked over 14 months, mapped directly against every incident at that house. Every single one had happened while he was away. "And the boy's statement?" she asked. I told her what Nathan had said, the sleepy medicine, the cotton feeling, the legs that wouldn't work right. She set her glasses down on the desk. "Mr. Doyle, I've practiced family law in this county for 22 years. Judges here do not take kindly to child endangerment, and with this level of documentation, plus the child's own statement to a caseworker, plus a second paramedic report on file." She tapped the folder. "We can have an emergency protective order in front of a judge before this afternoon is out." "Before this afternoon," I repeated. "Before this afternoon," she confirmed. "And then we go get that boy's life back to normal." I wanted to feel triumphant walking out of that office. I want to tell you it felt like the movies, sunlight, and a swell of music. It didn't. It felt like standing at the end of a long line of dominoes I'd spent 36 hours setting up, watching them start to fall, and feeling nothing yet, but a bone-deep exhaustion that comes from holding yourself together purely on discipline. The feelings would come later. Nathan came first. I drove back to the hospital. He was sitting up eating a cup of orange sherbet with the fierce concentration of a boy who had very specific opinions about sherbet consistency. "Grandpa, this one's got ice chunks in it." There he was. "When do I get to go home?" he asked. "This afternoon." He studied my face carefully. "Is Danielle going to be there?" "No, bud, she is not." Whatever he found searching my expression seemed to satisfy him, because he went back to his sherbet and said, "Can we get Skyline chili tonight? The three-way, with extra oyster crackers." Carol used to take that boy for Skyline every single Friday before she got sick. "We can get whatever you want," I told him, and I meant every word of it. At 1:45, Carla Whitfield called. "Mr. Doyle." The judge signed the order. "Danielle is barred from the property. No contact with Nathan. Effective immediately, based on the medical findings. Police are moving on a felony child endangerment charge and want to serve the order alongside it. Do you happen to know where she is right now? We'd rather not do this at the house while Nathan's being discharged. Here's a thing about a woman who's lived in your son's house for 2 years: you learn her rhythms, whether you mean to or not. Every Thursday, without fail, Danielle had a standing lunch with her sister and 2 friends from the neighborhood at a place called the Refectory out on Bethel Road. Same table, by the window, every single week. She texted Michael that very morning he'd finally gotten a signal at the rig heading to lunch with the girls. "We'll swing by the hospital after. Love you," with a little heart at the end. Michael had forwarded it to me without comment. "Yes," I told Carla Whitfield. "I know exactly where she'll be, and if you go now, she'll have a full house watching." Picture the Refectory at noon on a Thursday, white tablecloths, soft lighting, the kind of restaurant Columbus's more comfortable suburbs love for a long lunch. Danielle's table sat right by the front window. 4 women, wine glasses half full, and by all accounts she was mid-story, head tipped back laughing that big laugh of hers, the one she used to fill a room, the one I now understood. She also used to play the exhausted, devoted stepmother of a chronically clumsy little boy whenever it suited her. I wasn't there myself. I didn't need to be. 2 Franklin County Sheriff's deputies walked in with Carla Whitfield right behind them at 12:41. The restaurant didn't go silent all at once. It slowed table by table, the way a room does when everyone senses something significant is happening and nobody wants to be caught staring. They walked straight to the window table. Carla set the protective order and the warrant down on the white tablecloth, right beside Danielle's wine glass. "Danielle Doyle, I'm with Franklin County Children's Services. These are Deputies Marsh and Cole." Danielle looked at the papers, then at the deputies, then at her 3 friends, who had gone completely and perfectly quiet. "There's obviously been some kind of mistake," she said, using that same reasonable, composed voice she'd used on teachers and doctors, and one very trusting old man for 2 straight years. "Ma'am, your husband's father doesn't have the full picture on this," Deputy Marsh said. "Please stand up." She looked for a way out. The hostess told me later that Danielle actually glanced toward the kitchen door, then toward the front entrance, doing the math on whether the scene was survivable, whether she could talk her way sideways out of it the way she'd talked her way out of everything else for 2 years. She could not. The handcuffs went on in full view of the window table, the tables beside it, and the entire Thursday lunch crowd of the refectory. The circle of friends she'd cultivated and performed for, the women she'd chosen to spend her Thursdays with instead of the boy she was supposed to be raising, not one of them stood up. Not one of them said a word in her defense. I changed the locks on Schrock Road at 2 that afternoon. Called the insurance company at 1:30 to remove her from Nathan's policy. Called the elementary school at 3 to strip her name from the emergency contact list. Systematic. One thing at a time. In order. The way you shore up a structure once you've found the failure. You don't rush it. You don't skip a step. You make certain each one holds before you move to the next. Nathan came home at 5 that evening, cast on his leg, still wearing his hospital bracelet because he decided it made him look tougher. He walked through that front door slow on his crutches, looked around the front hall like he was checking whether the air itself had changed, and then let his backpack slide off his shoulder onto the floor by the stairs, right in the spot Danielle used to hate. "It smells different in here," he said. "Good different or bad different?" He thought it over with real seriousness. "Good, like when you open a window." "Yeah, bud, exactly like that." The Skyline arrived at 6:30, three-way with extra oyster crackers, and we ate it sitting on the living room floor because Nathan wanted to watch a documentary about bald eagles, and I did not have a single objection in the world. He fell asleep against my arm around 8:15, real sleep. Deep and easy, the kind that comes to a child who has, for the first time in longer than any of us understood, nothing left to be afraid of inside his own house. I didn't move for a long time. Just sat there in a house that felt, for the first time in 2 years, like it was finally standing up straight again. Danielle was booked into the county jail a little after 7 that evening, on felony charges of child endangerment, the kind of charge that follows a person into every room for the rest of her life. No matter how good her laugh is at a potluck, Carla texted me the booking time. I read it, set the phone down on the carpet, and looked at my grandson sleeping against my shoulder, his face slack and peaceful in a way I hadn't seen since before his own mother left. He's got Michael's chin, I thought. Always has. I pulled the blanket up around him and turned my eyes back to the bald eagles on the television. Some structures fail because nobody ever thought to inspect them. Some fail because somebody looked away on purpose. I spent 38 years teaching myself never to look away from a building. It took me 2 years too long to learn to apply that same discipline to my own family, but I got there. Every crack found. Every failure documented. Every door locked. This one's closed for good. If this story meant something to you tonight, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me down in the comments where you're tuning in from. I'll see you folks on the next one.